Archbishop Coakley, thank you so much for taking the time to talk to us about this very important new pastoral letter that you released. How long has this letter been in the works? Was there a catalyst in your own community that created this desire for you to publish something on this topic?
Thank you for the question and your interest in the topic. I've been working on this, seeking advice and counsel on this for quite a number of months. I gave a talk last fall, right after Thanksgiving, and this was kind of the most immediate catalyst. I decided to develop that a little bit further and issue it as a pastoral letter for the people of the Archdiocese and anybody else who might wish to read and study it. So it took a while to pull it together, but I consulted broadly, and I think we tried to find a balance that would prove helpful in a pastoral sort of way, and that's where it came from.
Well, that's very true. You did strike this very pastoral tone. It has a very personal feeling to it. And as the pastor to members of your diocese, the faithful that you shepherd, have specific events in your community made this kind of a letter necessary?
Well, I don't think we're any different than any other diocese. You know, there's so much confusion in our culture about sex and gender and the whole so-called trans movement. And, you know, we've had issues presented to us by some of our principals who are responding to children and parents who suffer with this gender dysphoria. And principals sought guidance from us as to how to respond when a child wishes to take liberties with the pronouns that they prefer and things of that sort. Or to be honest, just quite recently, a question about a young person who chooses now to identify with the opposite sex and wishing to walk at graduation and be presented with a new name. So those are the issues that I think we're dealing with, but we're not alone in dealing with those matters.
They're very painful and very complicated. And the Ethical and Religious Directive document that was released by the Doctrine Committee of the U.S. Catholic Bishops, that had a lot of clear direction for healthcare practitioners, but it lacked that pastoral guidance. I don't mean that as a criticism, I mean it as an opportunity. Is this letter meant to be a companion to that?
Well, I don't think it was conceived as a companion to that, because we were working on this before the doctrinal note came out from the USCCB, but I see how it could be. I think the Doctrine Committee's note serves a very specific, targeted focus, and I hope and think that will be very beneficial to those in healthcare. But this is obviously seeking a broader audience, parents, teachers, pastors, anyone who's accompanying, working with young people, especially young people.
Especially countering or addressing the social, cultural, and political environment that we're in right now. Pope Francis recently did that in a Disney Plus and Hulu special, where he noted that the Catholic Church's theology on human sexuality is still in diapers, which garnered much response from the right and the left. How does this letter walk with or respond to that comment or approach to human sexuality and our thoughts within the Church?
You know, I heard that comment from the Holy Father. I didn't see the context of it or read the fuller report, but you know, I think we have pretty clear guidance that has been articulated and lived for the last 2,000 years. We have the legacy of St. John Paul II with his theology of the body. We have clear doctrinal teaching and moral guidance. So I see this as all in continuity. There will be further articulations, undoubtedly, of clarity and refinements of the Church's teaching, as there always is, but I don't think there will be any rupture in what we have accepted as settled doctrine. So.
And in your response in this letter, you did note theological backing for the biological definition of sex. Is that what you mean by the 2,000 years of tradition?
Yes, I think we have, going back to the book of Genesis, I mean, male and female, he created them, man and woman. I think, uh, I think what's happening is, is in our culture is a clear rupture with this, with with human experience and human history, not to say the church's living tradition and the guidance of the Holy Spirit and the biblical foundations for the church's teaching. So I think, we are, we can benefit by some clarity that science can give about the meaning of sex, biological sex, and where gender comes from and things of that sort. But our focus is really on the doctrinal foundations for a solid pastoral approach that is willing to speak the truth in love. And we can't separate the two, as Pope Benedict so clearly articulated for us.
And you noted that in your letter. You also noted that some U.S. leaders are promoting, quote, what has been dubbed gender-affirming therapy, which seeks to bring the body into alignment with one's felt gender, rather than working to align one's felt gender with biological reality. You go on to say that scientific research and our faith affirm this, and affirming that is not helpful. And you also say that parents must use the pronouns of their God-given biological sex. Why was all of this important, all of these little pieces that you brought together?
Because I think the details of how we respond to this are important. We can show love and compassion and concern as a parent, as a pastor, as a friend, without jettisoning our commitment to the truth. And I think simply offering parents, for example, the little thing about the different nicknames that they might choose to use, and if their child wishes to be called by a different name or by to use a different pronoun, I think we can show ways, we can show affection and tenderness and compassion without succumbing to the pressure, and that parents often feel subjected to by a young person, a child whom they love very much, who is obviously suffering if they were to be bringing forth such questions and concerns as this.
Now, Archbishop Coakley, there were two very big and different responses to the ethical and religious directive, and I'm sure you will receive the same similar responses. Let's walk through them. Some Catholics might look at this letter and find the pastoral aspect confusing or affirming of the transgender community's insistence on their vocabulary around sex and gender. What additional context can you provide for those who feel like the pastoral direction is one that is causing them a crisis of conscience?
I guess I would have to hear what their concern would be. I think I've been very careful in the language that I've used to insist on the doctrinal integrity of our position, but at the same time recognizing the importance of being understanding and listening to a child and where they're hurting. I think nothing can be lost by taking time to listen and to try to understand and to try to even just enter into a worldview that maybe an adolescent is struggling with because they're being bombarded by it. And I think try to be very insistent on not an either-or situation, but it's as a Catholic. Our Catholic tradition is always insists upon. It's generally it's a both and, not a strict dichotomy, but to find a way of healing and reconciling and as speaking the truth, but with love and compassion and tenderness. So I don't know that I would accept the proposal, perhaps, that I'm going too far in either direction, in trying to be insistent upon both.
A welcoming that also affirms church teaching. But let's go into that other spectrum. What response do you have for those who would see it in a very different way, as a rejection of the seeming progress they've made with dialogue as an LGBTQ movement, pushing for advocacy with the church, for affirmation and for recognition?
Well, I guess I would say, we're guardians of the truth. We don't create this truth. And we have to be faithful to what we have received as a church, as a bishop, part of the worldwide communion and of my brother bishops. We have a role to play in being and safeguarding the legacy that we have received and handing it on faithfully to those who come after us. So we cannot depart from settled teaching. We have to be faithful shepherds, good stewards of the mysteries of faith that have been entrusted to us. And that includes the apostolic tradition that we have received, obviously. So, I think we can go so far, but we cannot betray our own role as shepherds and teachers.
Let's go a little deeper then into your guidance for parents and families. They're on the first line, the front lines of defense and protection for children. Should these conversations necessarily take place? Could that be seen as encouraging this issue or prevailing on the innocence of a child?
Yeah. I think my point here is not so much to initiate conversations about gender. My point is to initiate conversations that parents need to be in communication with their sons and daughters, to be engaging them regularly and making time for these not just this kind of conversation, but about the things that matter, things that are important. Any conversation, I think I say in here about gender, should be just a small subset of conversations that need to be taking place in the family all the time. So I think as opportunities might present themselves and as questions might be raised about what the sons and daughters might be hearing at school or what their friends are saying or talking about or what they're watching on what videos they're watching, don't shy away from the opportunity to engage their sons and daughters on these topics, because their children are engaging on these conversations and on these topics with others. Why not with parents who the first role to be teachers and guides in their faith development? So I think we have to have conversations. We have to be in relationship and communication. I would leave it to the discernment and timing of the parents to when is it appropriate to broach these topics. But I think not to be willing to go there, if you will, is maybe a disservice to the children.
A return to the kitchen table and the dining table discussion for families is probably a necessary and good thing. You mentioned something else that I found wonderful to see, but also filled me with questions. The impact of sexual wounds that leads to the rejection of the body. You mentioned this. For me, I always wonder, what role did the church play in creating opportunities for the transgender movement to prey on the generational wounds created by the sexual abuse crisis?
Well, the sexual abuse crisis is, obviously it's one of the most tragic episodes in the history of our church, certainly in modern time. And I don't think we can overstate or underestimate the implications of the kinds of woundedness that the many survivors and victims have been left with. Including mistrust of the church, and with that mistrust, perhaps a rejection of the church's teaching and moral authority. So I think there we have to say yes. This could be part of the unsettledness in our culture, at least in our Catholic culture, regarding an openness to questioning the church's teaching about sex and gender.
Could the church then help provide a solution, relief, a healing from this?
I would hope so. I think would certainly hope so. I think I think it begins with working on continuing to regain trust and being willing to as shepherds to teach clearly, but also to teach lovingly, to walk compassionately, and to provide as a loving father or a careful shepherd. You know, the guardrails, if you will, that will not allow young people to go astray, but will show them where the limits are. So I think, I think these are things that parents are having to discern constantly, guiding their children. And I think we as a church need to do the same thing without, of course, compromising on the essential truths of our faith.
That proclamation of the truth is so essential, and we are the church of compassion and forgiveness, so that gives me great hope. Was this letter meant to encourage your brother bishops to publish similar pastoral notes for their flocks?
Well, I would hope that they might consider it. There's not much out there at this point, but as I said, I've already heard from several bishops in the last 24 hours who have thanked me for this, and I wouldn't be surprised if some of them will find their own way to disseminate what I've tried to articulate in their own dioceses and in their own local settings. But yeah, I think we need to be more upfront and clear as bishops and shepherds about this matter. And I think our priests in our parishes need the reassurance that this kind of guidance from a bishop can offer, because they're the ones that are on the front lines in their parishes dealing with this in a much more regular way than I am dealing with it.
They're getting questions from principals and parents, so it's a great gift that you gave to them. These are difficult conversations, but what do you hope the faithful and those who identify as or advocate for LGBTQ policies, what do you hope they glean from your letter?
I guess I would hope that they recognize that God has created us all in his image and likeness because he loves us, because he cares for us. He sent his son to suffer and die for us, to redeem us, to liberate us from the shackles and slavery of sin, and to call us to something more. Just last Sunday in the gospel, Jesus says, I came that they may have life and have it more abundantly. That's what I hope people will hear, that this is an invitation to experience and to taste and to know the abundant life that the Lord desires for all of his sons and daughters whom he has created in his image and in his likeness. It's an invitation, and it's a proposal to open oneself to the love of the Father and to experience that unconditional love that God has for all of us, that Jesus showed us, suffering and dying for us. That's what I hope.
Well, it's a great hope to have as we close out the Easter season. So thank you so much, Archbishop Coakley, both for this letter and this discussion.
Thank you very much, Montse. God bless you.